as a musical art, we need to be proactive about showing folks how this music from many, many years ago, and in the case of choral music, it could be 400 or 500 years ago, is still relevant in their time. Why are we singing this Renaissance piece? What does it have to do with me right now? And there are ways that you can make some kind of a connection for students in music that way. Using that idea of quality programming has been at the forefront of what I do. And so moving into the spring semester, just to give you an example of what we're going to do Joel Thompson's piece entitled Seven Last Words of the Unarmed. And Joel is an African-American composer, and this is his response to Black men that have been killed by policemen. Now, I know that's really polarizing in our society, but it's a real lived experience for people who we all share this world with. And so for my choirs, it's an opportunity for us, not for me to make them decide how they feel about it, but to help them start developing the language to talk to each other about it through learning the music. Because some of them may not even be aware of these stories. Some of them may not even be aware of, some of them have only had Black composers that have done spirituals. And so if part of my programming is about humanity, and a part of that, one of the offshoots of humanity is respect. We can't learn how to respect a culture until we learn about a culture.
Welcome to Director's Circle, a podcast featuring insights from music educators and school leaders discussing their philosophies towards the administrative leadership of a comprehensive music program. I'm Doug Conrad, and today's guest is Dr. Derrick Fox from Omaha, Nebraska. Let's begin. Hello friends, and welcome to Director's Circle. I'm Doug Conrad. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been about a year now since I've started this project, believe it or not, and I would like to just thank all of you for all the support you've given along the way, whether it be subscribing to the show through Spotify or iTunes or Google Play Music, downloading an individual episode, or even following our social media accounts on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Every little bit has been so meaningful, and I really appreciate it. Now, where I'm putting a call to action for all of you listeners, and I would really appreciate it, is if you could share word of the show or even a specific episode to somebody in the music community who may benefit from this. The vision for this podcast is not just to be centric on one area of a music program, such as just for band directors, just for choir directors and the like, but for the whole music community at large. And that is why I've really tried to embrace the comprehensive approach to music making and getting a wide variety of guests of high acclaim that can really share some beneficial ideas that all of us can learn from. So, with that said, if you'd like, we are available again on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play Music, and even iHeartRadio. And also, if you'd like to look us up on social media, as again I said, we are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and I even post updates on the show to my personal LinkedIn page if you want to look me up under Doug Conrad. So now, with that said, on to today's guest. Today's guest is a very special man, Dr. Derrick Fox, and he has a very unique background in that where we all usually come from a line since high school or even before that of a very single path. For instance, where I'm a band director, I've always been that band nerd. I've been involved in choral functions, but never to a serious degree. And where Dr. Fox has a unique story is that he largely comes from a primarily instrumental background, including his undergraduate experience, and converting to being a vocal music specialist and a leading conductor and educator and composer in the field. So with that said, he has many great insights to share from both an instrumental and choral background, and I'm really happy to bring him on today. So now, a little bit more about Dr. Fox. Dr. Derrick Fox is the Director of Choral Activities and is also Assistant Professor of Music at the University of Nebraska-Omaha. Dr. Fox has conducted all-state choirs, honors choirs, and has also led professional development workshops across the United States and internationally. His professional workshops focus on the assessment in choral classrooms, as well as building classroom community, effective rehearsal strategies, as well as choral conducting techniques and shape note singing in the African American community. He is an accomplished composer and arranger, and is also author of the acclaimed book, Yes You Can, A Band Director's Guide to Teaching Choirs. Hello, Dr. Fox. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, glad to have you here. So how's the school year been going out so far?
It has been great. We've hit the ground running with lots of performances. We just wrapped up a gospel festival with Dr. Raymond Wise from Indiana University, and we did a collaborative project with our university choirs and our local choir here, the Omaha Symphonic Choir. So it's been wonderful. I was in South Africa for about 9 days on a fellowship exchange. So it has been a great fall so far.
Oh man, that's certainly a lot of travel. But to kind of get into that a little bit too, how you were talking about some work with the university, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your upbringing, and your professional background, musically speaking?
Yeah, sure, sure. So I grew up in a single parent home with just my mom, and she supported me in every endeavor that I wanted. And so one thing, except playing football, she was not interested in me playing football. So I played the clarinet instead. And people kind of get a chuckle out of that because they ask me, "Oh, did you play football?" And I go, "Nope, I played clarinet." And they get a little chuckle, and I go, "Yeah, my mom was not interested in me breaking any bones in junior high school, so I just broke reeds." So I did that, and I graduated from Blytheville High School in Blytheville, Arkansas, and then I went to my undergrad at Arkansas State University in Jonesboro, Arkansas, where I got my first degree in instrumental music education, and I was ready to get out into the band world. And I've been teaching private lessons, and, I sang in choir in college, maybe 2 or 3 semesters, and took some voice lessons for about that same amount of time. But I was that hardcore. I was ready to get out there and teach some marching band and do all that stuff. But then my first job was actually teaching choir, and I won't go into a lot of details about how that happened. It seems, when I think about it, it seems like a short amount of time, but it happened because of a lot of relationships that I built while I was at the Arkansas State University. And so lo and behold, I found myself teaching junior high school choir after I thought I was going to be this high school band director. And it's one of the best decisions that I ever made because I feel like I've really found a place that I can bring my passion for music to fruition, and also pay forward the many things that I was given as an early student of music and now as a teacher of music. So I did that for years, and then I left MacArthur Junior High School and went to University of Missouri, Columbia, where I got my master's degree in choral conducting with Dr. Paul Crabb. A little shout out to them. They just sang at the National ACDA convention in Kansas City, so I'm really proud to be a part of that choral tradition. And then once I left there, I taught high school at Parkway North High School in St. Louis. And that was an amazing experience that I had with my co-conductor there, Brian Reeves, who's currently the president of the Missouri Music Educators Association. And I just loved every minute of working in that school. There was such a diverse student population, and they were so welcoming to me. And I was able to feel like I contributed a lot to the program, but also learned a lot in that program that continues to permeate my teaching to this very day. And once I left there, I decided it was time for me to get my doctorate degree, and I went to Michigan State University, where I had the wonderful opportunity to study with Dr. David Rail, Dr. John Reed, and Dr. Sandra Snow. Just life-changing experience, and they continue to be supportive of my career to this day. I was there actually on a fellowship, which made it possible for me to go to graduate school, especially as a practicing teacher who was used to getting a paycheck every year. To be able to go into that fellowship where they believed in me so much that they supported me at all levels. And the Michigan State, that fellowship was very helpful. And when I finished that degree, and part of my study was researching shape note singing in the African American community. And so I have an arrangement of a piece that is rooted kind of in that tradition, and continue to make connections with folks as they learn more about shape note singing. And then from there, I got my very first job at Ithaca College in Ithaca, New York, where I taught choral conducting, and I taught 2 wonderful choirs. And again, an experience of working in a community that I had not previously been a part of, and I learned a lot about me. Again, I think I contributed a lot to that program, but I also learned a lot and honed my teaching skills, and continue to grow as a musician as well, because teaching at the collegiate level challenges me in a way that I was looking for. And it also helped me continue to make some of the connections that I've always wanted to make, but I just didn't quite know how. Make connections for singers at each level to figure out how they can continue to contribute once they leave junior high school and high school into college. And once I left there, I went to where I am now, which is the University of Nebraska at Omaha, where I've continued to build upon this idea of building community and showing longevity in this activity, this life-changing music making that comes from singing. And so it's been a lot of trying to figure out how to connect our college students to the community. I just spoke to you about that. And here as DCA, I have graduate students, and I've always wanted to play a role in shaping the music education, the choral music education specifically of older students, and also work with all the undergraduates as well. I want to stay connected in that way. But it also allowed me the opportunity to connect across a wide spectrum of teachers that teach in many different situations. Omaha is about 1 million people, and it's a pretty diverse part of the country. And so I get the opportunity to work with choirs that look and sound very different from each other, and figuring out how I can go in and convince them that we have a place for them at University of Nebraska-Omaha, which we'll call UNO from this point forward. So it's been a phenomenal time figuring out how to continue to connect college students to their communities, honing my own practice as a music educator, realizing how much I've changed in terms of what I believe the purpose of music is and singing is in people's lives, and how that is reflected in the work that I do, not only with the way I program, but with the purpose of my programs, and even in the things that I say to my students and how I talk to my students, has definitely morphed over these years. So that's a little bit of a rundown of kind of how I got to where I am.
That's quite a remarkable story. So to get that straight, when you did your undergrad, you actually have your degree with an instrumental emphasis, correct?
Yeah,
at the bachelor's level?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you were, as I take then, a clarinet major in your undergrad?
Absolutely, man. I was like hardcore all-state clarinet. I was that one that would wear the shirts that would say it's a clarinet. It's an all-state thing you wouldn't understand. It was such an thing. And in that moment, I was just proud of myself. But that shirt was really, someone should have just taken me and like thumped me in the forehead for wearing that kind of stuff. But I was just so deeply into music, and I realized that it played a major role in shaping my life, because, and I'll say this to you because I say it to everybody, if the statistics were what I based my life on, then those statistics say that an African American man from a single family should be in jail, and I'm not that, and I was not going to let that shape me. And so it's pretty significant, the role that music plays in my life, which is why I continue to try to help folks figure out what their role is in their lives. It may not be as significant as it is in mine, but I do think that there's a role for music in everybody's life.
That's really neat. So to kind of elaborate on that further, because that's a unique subject that a few of our previous guests have had, is where when they first started their undergraduate experience, either they started in a totally different career path in music education, or even they switched within their primary instrumental roles within that. So when was that first big moment when you really made that leap from being what we could say an instrumental person to a choral emphasis? Did it come with your first job, or was it a little bit before that?
No, it was, I had been singing in a church choir in Jonesboro. And so, I was dabbling in singing, but I wouldn't call myself a quote unquote singer. And one of the choir director at the local junior high school, she was the choir director of that choir. And she asked me to come in and model for the boys once. And I was like, oh, sure. And she offered me, I don't know, it may have been $50. But at that time, when you're an undergrad, $50, I mean, that's a week's worth of ramen noodles, or it's a lot of money, basically. And so I said, sure, I'll come over and do that. And it became a consistent thing. But she always saw me because I was with the band director a lot. I owe a lot to Bonnie Kimbrough and her support for me in my student teaching. But I got to be over there a lot. And through that, I met the choir director. And that's how I kind of started getting my feet into singing. I sang in high school, 2-3 years, I think. And then when I got to Arkansas State University, I sang, like I said, a few semesters and took some voice lessons. But it really was just, and there is no profound thing. I had room in my credit load to take it, and it would be paid for. So I was like, why not? I'll give it a try. I haven't had voice lessons before. And there is no big epiphany in terms of why I took that job. It was the highest paying job I got offered that year. And so I said, ding, ding, that's the one I'm taking. I'll learn whatever it is I need to know. And I think they hired me in that job because they knew me already, and that they had seen me because I started substitute teaching once I got in and started modeling for the boys in the choir. And then they started asking me to come over and sub. And so they recognized that I had some classroom management chops. And that's a big thing that I push with my students too. If you have some classroom management chops, you can work around some of the hurdles that may be in place in front of you in terms of pedagogy. You can learn those things because once you get in the job, some of those things get hard to latch onto because you're trying to paperwork and concerts and all those types of things. But anyhow, I digress. I got into that job because it was the highest paying job that I took. And it was totally immersion choir for me. And I was friends with the previous choir director. And so she would come up and still help me. And I built a community for myself that I could trust, that helped me build my knowledge skills to be able to be successful in the choral classroom.
That's quite a unique round of circumstance there. So to kind of touch on that, I know you talked a little bit about that before, especially in your current program at UNO, where you say you try to embrace building a sense of community within your students. So even with your first gig to everything you've done up until now in your current role, how do you approach building that sense of community within your students?
For me, I didn't realize, I knew when I was in college that we had a community, but I didn't know exactly the nuts and bolts of how it happened. I just was with these folks all the time. And then when I first started teaching community, I never really thought about community. We got together, we sang, that was our community. But I began to realize that there were some active steps that the people that were happening when I was in a place of music making where I felt really connected. And I thought, okay, what's happening here? Why do I feel really connected? Why do I want us to be so successful? Why do I want to be the best version of myself for this group? And that's when I realized it's because I had ownership in what was happening. And so the conductor teacher provided opportunities for me to take on some ownership. Also, there was some programming happening that reflected my lived experiences. And when people see themselves in your work, or they feel like they have a part in building that work, then they buy into it. Thus comes community.
So now to touch on a little bit specifically, even into what you do now with your current role as a director of choral activities, a lot of what we do, some of the most important components of our job come down to repertoire selection and analysis for what we give our students throughout our yearly curriculum. So in your opinion, even in specifics to the choral realm, what constitutes quality repertoire?
For me, I used to get hung up on picking quality repertoire because I saw people coming up with these programs that were like light. And then they would bring all these pieces together that somehow came together about light, or something about, couch pillows. And then they have all these, all these things that about fluffy or sturdy and things like that. And that was an absurd example, but you get it. But that was not me. That is not how I think about repertoire. That's not how I put repertoire together. And so in thinking about how I could best communicate my thoughts about repertoire, I had to think about it from an idea of programming. And so what I think about is, what is quality programming instead of what's quality repertoire? Because for me, that's really subjective. As I flip through all these catalogs of musics, you see of various musics that are available, you will see things like, I'm trying to name something really random because I'm sure that what's in my mind is a piece out there already about it, and I don't want to create any bad blood, but, people may find some value in a piece about toy cars where I don't. Because I don't believe in that doesn't mean that it's not quality repertoire for their group or for what they believe in. So what allows us all the leeway to pick repertoire that best fits the community in which we're working and the goals that we have as an educator is to think about it as what makes quality programming. And so what I think makes quality programming is are pieces, one, that allow students to delve into their own humanity. And a part of humanity means empathy, sympathy, respect. It allows students to learn about experiences outside of their realm of experience. So making sure you include composers of underrepresented populations and marginalized populations, making sure you have pieces of the majority population, because that is a real lived experience that's happening in our country, and also talking about that. So not just doing a piece and not talking about We can talk about the history of it, but how does it relate to what's happening to us right now? And that's where, as a choral art, we need to be proactive. As a musical art, we need to be proactive about showing folks how this music from many, many years ago, and in the case of choral music, it could be 400 or 500 years ago, is still relevant in their time. Why are we singing this Renaissance? Why are we singing this Renaissance piece? What does it have to do with me right now? And there are ways that you can make some kind of a connection for students in music that way. So that using that idea of quality programming has been at the forefront of what I do. And so moving into the spring semester, just to give you an example of what we're going to do Joel Thompson's piece entitled Seven Last Words of the Unarmed. And Joel is an African-American composer, and this is his response to Black men that have been killed by policemen. Now, I know that's really polarizing in our society, but it's a real lived experience for people who we all share this world with. And so for my choirs, it's an opportunity for us, not for me to make them decide how they feel about it, but to help them start developing the language to talk to each other about it through learning the music, because some of them may not even be aware of these stories. Some of them may not even be aware of, some of them have only had Black composers that have done spirituals. And so if part of my programming is about humanity, and a part of that, one of the offshoots of humanity is respect. We can't learn how to respect a culture until we learn about a culture. And that comes with music from around the world as well. And then along with that, we're going to pair that with a piece by Jocelyn Hagan entitled Snow Angel. And that's a whole different set of music. She's a white female composer from Canada. And I want to be sure to say that because sometimes our students, when we say composers, they're used to seeing the dead white man that are on the board in their elementary classrooms. And I'm not judging teachers for putting that up, because they're only doing what they've been taught, or they've only been doing what they're experiencing. So maybe if we start putting some different faces up there, our singers and our musicians will not just think about a composer as just this. So anyhow, I can talk to you very candidly about that. And I don't use the same language that I'm using right now with my students. It's a very nuanced process, because there has to be so much scaffolding that goes into place so that they can consume it all and then translate that into a musical product. So it's not just a one concert thing. It's a quality of programming that stretches across an entire program, so that as students progress through, they have all these different experiences that they can begin to connect and make understandings about their own worlds and the worlds around people around them. So it's for me, that's the best way for me to be able to think about programming, because it allows me the ability to delve into lots of diverse repertoire. It challenges me to get out of my comfort zone, because let me tell you, I love slow and schmaltzy like the best of them. But when I go back and think about, okay, what's my goal here? Is my goal to have people relax, or is my goal to have them be on the edge of their seat? Okay, I can't do that slow piece with all these lush chords. I got to pick something fast. So for me, that's how I've been able to work around this idea of programming, of repertoire. I think about it as quality programming, and I still get the variety of repertoire I want, but it still also has that focus that comes when you do a program about light, or about water, or about deserts, or about sand. It's just what works for me.
Yeah, that's a really unique approach. So to kind of touch on that a little bit more, and specifically how you implement that in your teaching practice, I especially know even with my concert band program, with my students in my high school group, we're doing a piece right now called Spring Festival by the female Chinese composer Chen Yi. And with that piece, we're doing a lot of because I teach in a fairly rural area, so a lot of exposure to that culture is not taught a lot across the school curriculum, with that being a kind of a world culture thing. So we talk a lot about Eastern Harmony. We've been delving into some of that cultural stuff that replicates as well. There's a lot of different sounds going on that they've never been even exposed to in their performance before. So even in addition to other pieces of which you can talk about bringing to light, if you will, to your students an array of different subjects, which ways might you go about first exposing that or introducing that piece to a student, and then subtly you could go rehearsal by rehearsal or concert by concert. How do you help enlighten your students to having a deeper cultural awareness through your musical selections?
Yeah, so one of the things that I might do, it's a little bit different. I have a little more leeway at the collegiate level than one might have at a high school level. So I'm going to talk about the high school level first, and then I'll talk to you about what I do. So one of the things that I would do is we would actually just listen to the piece. I know sometimes in the world when we're going through our conducting classes, we get taught, don't listen to recordings, make your own musical ideas. But I believe that students need to hear the piece before they start breaking down the piece. They have to have some kind of context for the music that they're going to be playing. And then after that, one of the ways that students can begin to engage, maybe even in a non-musical way that will help give them a better musical understanding, is nobody reads program notes. I'm not even sure. I didn't even write program notes when I was in high school. But one of the ways to get them engaged and to get them to buy in is maybe before that piece starts, you have them do a presentation about what it is that you're doing, what they're about to play, and it's based on all the information that you've given them in class. So one, they take ownership of it. Two, your concerts look just a little bit different than they might normally be, going from piece to piece to piece to piece. So the audience is engaged differently. They're listening because it's their own kids, and I know I have too. If my kids start to talk, I perk up a little bit, just to kind of hear that. So immediately everybody's engaging in a way that they don't normally do when they come to concerts. So they're listening more, and when we're listening more, we may be comprehending more of what's happening, as opposed to, oh, it's just another choir piece. It's just another choir piece. So those are some of the ways that I would build in for my students to not necessarily buy into, but to understand and get context for what they're playing or what they're singing, so that they could use that emotion to create the music that we want. If you haven't made any kind of decision about what it is that you're playing, then you're not going to create genuine music. That's kind of how it works in the choral world, and I'm assuming also at some level in the instrumental world as well. And so along the way, there are opportunities for, and it may be a little more difficult within the instrumental world because you have instruments, but in the choral world, I will often have my students in sections decide, what are you going to do musically with your part? Now, of course, this happens with some scaffolding. I don't just hand out the piece and go, what are you going to do? Because I know some listeners may think, I could never do this. I could never just pass out a piece and go, what do you think? Clearly, there's scaffolding that has to go before this, and I have to have done the exercise of letting them make musical decisions before we get to this point. And then once they have made that decision amongst themselves, then we come back and we just sing. And we talk about sopranos. What did you hear the basses do? Does that, if you look at that text, does that sound like the way you would have interpreted that piece? This is a really high level cognitive process on the Bloom's taxonomy list. So this comes after they've learned the piece already, but engaging them that way so that they have to make decisions about what they're playing helps get them build that community in the piece and helps get them to buy into the piece. I can do that really quickly at the collegiate level. When I was teaching high school, it would take much longer for me to build in some of these experiences where we learn a little bit more about the culture, or maybe we learn that this piece is in reference to this culture in China. Let's learn about this culture in China. Let's learn about the instruments from this culture. Let's learn about why this music sounds like this, so that we can put it in context. And this goes to a bigger issue that we're kind of working through now, which is appropriation. And students will understand more about the intricacies of that if we take them through these processes of learning what it's like to show respect for other people's music, because that's where we get in trouble with music and composing of music and arranging of music, is when we write it and we don't pay homage to the originators. We don't name names. These are the people who gave me access to this music of this culture that I'm not a part of. This is what I've learned through this process. This is the purpose of this piece. And taking your students through that same process is not a bad idea, because they're going to need to do that when they walk out into the world in non-musical situations. I know I'm throwing a lot out to you, but that's the complicated process that I think about and go through when I'm programming, thinking about quality programming.
Sure. So another area where you are highly active in the choral community is your work as a composer and arranger. So working at the collegiate level, especially as a not just conductor but a director of choral activities, as well as your career as a composer, how do you balance between both crafts in your day-to-day life?
That's a great question. That all has to happen after daycare pickup. Because I'm kidding. It's tough. It is a tough balance. I'm not going to lie to you. I, with two kids under 6 and a wife who works just as hard and just as much as I do, finding time to compose and arrange is something that I like, but I have to it's not always it's shifting on the priority list. Let's just say it that way. I won't say it's at the bottom. I won't say it's at the top, but it's constantly shifting. If there's something that is really compelling to me, usually it comes out onto the screen, finale screen, really quickly. But right now in this season of my life, I will tell you that I'm not producing as much music because I've been really consumed with with my current job and trying to make sure I'm building experiences that are enriching my students' lives and giving them some opportunities that they may not have had uh, in the past. Just because this is a metropolitan university, and we have lots of students who come from a wide array of lived experiences. And we have students who have children. We have students who work full-time jobs. We have students who don't have any of those and can just go to school because it's paid for, because of scholarships or parents or whatever. And so I find that in this job, I have to work a little more strategically about how I build experiences, which requires more time. And I'm willing to give that time to this and not to my composing and arranging, because I believe in this idea of, if I drop a pebble into this pond that I'm currently in, that the ripple effect that will come from the teachers that leave here will be forever. And so right now, in terms of balancing that, I'm a little out of kilter with the composition side and composing side in favor of spending more time with developing experiences with my own school. And I'm also doing a lot of traveling with conducting honor choirs and a lot more professional development sessions, which I'm beginning to really like because I love teaching teachers. And I like being able to help folks think outside of their box. I also like to offer pedagogical tips to folks. I also like to give folks experiences that will affirm what they do, that will challenge what they do, and that will also give them something that they can take right back into their classroom as soon as they leave a session. And so those kinds of things are really consuming me a little bit more. 2 summers ago, it was all arranging and composing. So it really just kind of ebbs and flows with the season of my life.
Okay, so to kind of talk about that with the ebb and flow with some things, like let's say if I were to go on your computer right now, are you still actively composing anything at the moment, or is that something a year from now that you could have 5 pieces and like I know like myself, like on my finale tab on my computer, I have 3 different things I'm just meddling with arranging too. Does it fluctuate like that way too?
It does fluctuate. If you go onto my phone, you won't see anything in Finale, but you will hear, if you go into my voicemail, you will hear about 10 clips of compositions that are currently in my mind. And so usually what I'll do is I'll sing some parts. And I know these parts go with this piece, and these parts go with this piece, and these parts go with this piece, so that when the season comes back around where I have more time to devote to composing and arranging, I'll have those pieces and it just kind of unfolds. It really happens. It just happens so quickly for me that way. So if you look at my voice memos, you will see lots and lots and lots of sung parts. And you will hear lots of sung parts for various pieces that are in my mind.
Interesting. So to kind of touch on that a little bit too, with your background, especially teaching in public schools, but as well as at the collegiate level, how has your work and experiences working with kids as an educator influenced your work or philosophy towards making music as a composer?
Oh my gosh, accessibility. People want things that are accessible. And so if you look at most of the things that I have put out right now, it's geared towards areas where where I remember as a choir director, I had a hard time finding music to fit, and where I hear when I go around the country and even the world where people are telling me they have a difficult time finding music to fit. So the treble voice, the non-advanced treble voice at the high school level, that's hard. It's hard to find music there because most treble choirs are pretty, if you were to compare them, this is not a hard and fast rule. This is not a capital T truth. It's a small T truth. But you'll find that around the country that treble choirs tend to advance a little faster than most tenor bass choirs. And that's kind of a developmental thing mentally, But what happens is when you get into high school, there's so much repertoire for like 4-part women's choir. Well, not everybody has a 4-part women's chorus. And so if you're looking for music that's not outdated, that you want to do, you have sometimes people have a difficult time. So I have a piece or two that are applicable to that specific area. Also, the changing voice for tenor basses. There's some music there that there's a little bit of a gap there for music in that space, and so I'm trying to write music that gives those folks who don't want simple text, because it's simple music, if that makes any sense. Sometimes when it's simple music, it's a trite text, but I think they want the young tenors and basses to have that experience with text that is deep, because there was a point in time that I do believe that folks thought junior high boys don't think deep. They're just trying to get from class to class and go get to lunch, but I do think our young men think deeply. It's just because of social constructs that they don't always have the space to maybe communicate those deep thoughts, because we allow the sopranos and altos or women to do that. And so I think folks are looking for music that is simple in terms of the vocal challenge, or maybe not as difficult in terms of vocal challenge, that also provides text that is challenging and well thought out and well constructed for the young tenor bass voice.
So if someone wanted to look into your musical library, what would be the best way for them to go about looking into your different pieces?
Everything that I have is on JW Pepper. My publisher is, I have publishings with Hal Leonard and Briley Music, but you can also go to those specific websites and do that. But I have pieces. Everything can be ordered from JW Pepper. If you are a school that can only have one PO out for somewhere to order, you can go there.
Okay, so now to talk a little bit about something you even talked about a few minutes ago, where another passion of yours is providing professional development for music educators. And one thing that you are well known for too, and this can even tie back is what we talked about in your background about being an instrumental person at first, was your well-known book, Yes You Can, A Band Director's Guide to Teaching Choirs. Could you talk a little bit about this book and how you came about to write a book on such a specific topic?
Absolutely. It's basically kind of the tools and pedagogical practices that saved me in my first job. That came about because I had a friend at Briley Music they have an orchestra book of the same thing. Yes You Can, the Band Director's Guide to Teaching Orchestra. The instrumentalist, I can't remember the exact name. But I realized that we have this situation in a lot of parts of the country. And this came about from my own travels. There are some states, when I talk to people in Texas, they go, man, it's kind of unheard of for people to be teaching choir and band in Texas, because there's so many big programs and that. But when you get out of a state that's that big and where they have traditions of maybe really funding music programs at a level that's higher than some other states around the country, you find that people are having to piece together different parts of music education in order to have a full-time job. And so I knew that this was something that was needed, and the opportunity for me to write it came about from a dinner at Florida Music Educators Association, this random dinner with, Denise Eaton. And we hadn't seen each other in a long time, and we just talked. And she's the editor for the book, but that book is rooted in my feelings as an instrumentalist teaching in the classroom. I knew nothing about the adolescent voice change. I knew nothing about the techniques that one might use to be able to alter a piece to fit a voice going through the voice change, like voice pivoting and octave displacement, pick where to go to pick repertoire, how to start a piece of music, how to do rehearsal in a choir setting. All very, very different, but also similar in a lot of ways. And so the point of this book is to help bridge that knowledge gap for the instrumentalist who, for whatever reason, finds himself teaching a choir. It could be you teach 5 periods of band, and because you need to have, one full-time you need to have a full-time job, they say, well, you have to teach one section of tenor bass choir. Here you go. It's for that person who needs a quick reference guide. This is what I hear. These are some things I can try to do that. Instead of like a 400-page method book that when you're in the heat of classroom and you have 20 or 5 or 50 students looking at you, and you don't have time to flip through 400 pages to find an answer. You have, boom, this is what I'm going to try. But also in a part of that book, there's an index in there that if you want to know more about anything that's in there, we provided some resources for you to do that on your own time. So it's it's made out so that you could put it on a music stand and have it right by your piano or your keyboard or whatever you teach from, so that you can find success there. And it's all rooted from practice experience. It's not me as a doctoral student looking for a dissertation to write. So I'm just going to try to cram this square peg into this circle so I can say I've done it. It's all practice things, and it's things that I've practiced. And you'll see, you have access to some video clips of some different types of rehearsals that you might want to try to implement in your own choir rehearsal. So I've gotten lots of great feedback from all around the country, and I'm doing this at Midwest this coming up year, but I'm also going to be doing it in Missouri as well, for Missouri Music Educators Association, because there are lots of places around the country that are experiencing this, and there should be no shame attached to it. There should be no fear attached to it, though it is like teaching a classroom full of French horns. Nobody can find the right pitch sometimes, but you can do it, as the title of the book says. Yes, you can, because I did, and hopefully this book will continue to be helpful for the many folks who have bought it and who will buy it in the future.
Yeah, it sounds like a great resource. And to touch now on your upcoming presentation at Midwest, is there anything you want to plug in or say about what one could expect to see at your upcoming presentation in December?
Yeah, absolutely. So it won't be a book presentation. I'm not going to go page by page in the book at all, because that's not what Midwest is for. But it will be a session rooted in that topic. And so you'll leave with rehearsal practices and pedagogy that you can take back into whatever teaching situation you may find. It could be that you are a band director all day and you sing in a church choir and the choir director is gone for some reason and you have to step in. So we'll talk about many of the techniques that one might need to be successful if they find themselves in a situation teaching choir, but they haven't been fully trained to do that. And so that session, I'm not sure if you'll be able to put that up on your podcast, but that session is, I think it's on that Thursday, and the date for that is, now I was going to say January, is December 19th at 1:00. I don't know the exact room yet, but Midwest is huge. And if you're looking for a resource for yourself, if you're looking for some resources for people who might be in that situation, this will be the session for you to come and gain some knowledge around that.
For sure. So let's say if we were to hypothetically take a ride back in a time machine and, or approximately, of course, if we were to talk to the 23 or 24-year-old Derrick Fox when he was about ready to start his first job, or if it wasn't your exact first job, another first job, which would be teaching vocal music full-time. If you had to pick 3 to 5 things that you would tell your 23-year, right when you started out teaching, what would be 3 to 5 things that you would say, hey, going into this new field of vocal music, what are some things that you need to know ice cold, or stone cold, I should say, by the beginning of the school year?
You mean pedagogy specific to teaching choir, or just what I would tell a new teacher in general?
Specific to teaching choir.
Yeah, okay.
Coming from an instrumental background.
Sing. You need to be singing, because one of the things that I can tell you that's really different as an instrumentalist is that your instrument is not your body. You can take it away and put it in a case, and you can't take your vocal mechanism out and put it in a place. So everything that is said to you about the way you use this part of your body can be very personal. And you have to remember that, because that needs to be at the forefront of all of the teaching that you do, so that you might be able to say, that sound was horrible. And you can look at the horn and go, oh, okay, well, this pad was missing, or we need to restring this, or we need to do this. But when you say that to a vocalist, you're talking about their body. And that is a very different experience, because there is no pushing out or pulling out or pushing in or you tightening a screw. It's very personal. So that's at the forefront. Excuse me. That's one of the things that I would tell people. I would also say you need to have some piano skills. Even if it means playing 1 or 2 parts at a time, because, or if you can't necessarily play your piano skills, don't be uncomfortable using your instrument in the classroom as a tool for teaching as well. Because, people want to, sometimes in our efforts to feel like we are, master teachers, we all like to say we don't play parts in rehearsal. Everybody plays parts in rehearsals. Everybody does. And if they tell you that they don't, then they're not telling you the truth. Because at some point, at the highest level of music making, somebody has to play a part for somebody. So don't get caught up in that. And if you have to use your own instrument to be able to demonstrate what someone's part sounds like because you've worked on it, and they still aren't getting it with all of the different techniques that you use your instrument. Number 3, I'd say learn solfege. Solfege is a way that you can help your students learn how to be independent musicians. Our goal is to be able to set them up to be successful when they leave our classrooms, not only while they're in our classrooms, but when they leave their classrooms. So learning how to solfege is not the only moniker of musicianship. We know that there are people who make music from many different cultures who don't sight read and do solfege. And that's fine, but we are in this field that's rooted in music education, and part of music education is music literacy. So using solfege is a way for your students to be independent musicians and to be able to survive outside of your classroom. I think the 4th one is to find a set of trusted individuals who will tell you what you are successful at and who will tell you where you need improvement because they are truly interested in your growth as a new teacher in a situation that you may not have been fully prepared to do. Because we have enough people in our lives who are willing to tell us those things because they want us to know that they found out something is wrong with us. So finding that trusted group of people who are invested in you and invested in your growth. And I will tell you that sometimes telling the difference between those folks is very difficult, but you have to figure that out for yourself. And I think the last one is, whatever you do, put the students at the forefront of your work. Because I will say, in the beginnings of my work, I was very frustrated, and sometimes that frustration came out as me yelling at a student, or sometimes that frustration came out to me as, and I'll say this because I say it everywhere I go, so it's not something that I'm afraid to have out there. I would have 5 air freshener cans lined up on my piano. Most of the time they were to spray because it was junior high school. And then I realized I had a chance, I could control the thermostat. So if I kept it cold, nobody would move. But there were times where I would just be so mad and I would throw one of those air freshener cans. And I look back up at that version of me and I go, who in the world was that? And you know what that was? Because I didn't have the words to say to help them figure out how to be better. It was manifested in that very negative and very dangerous way. And I recognize that about myself. So my advice to that person who may be feeling that right now as they're listening to this is go ask. If you are feeling so frustrated about something, go ask for help. And that help can come from your trusted folks. That help can come from my book, plugging that. That help can come from another person who, across the town who's teaching a different subject, but understands what it's like to not have the words to connect with the students who are in front of you. You have to be willing to ask for help. No teacher is an island unto themselves. That's a choice that we make. That's not a reality that we have to live in.
Yeah, lots of great ideas, Derrick. So the one I really enjoyed that you talked about was even using your instrument is a model in the classroom if it was ever something where your piano chops were a little under, because usually a lot of band directors that I've spoken to, they use their instruments a lot in their band or orchestral programs as a model. So is that even something you've done yourself then? So back in time, would I have seen you use your clarinet with your students?
You know what? Because I was comfortable at that point, I was comfortable with singing, that I could use my voice to model. I think modeling is a wonderful way to teach. It's a wonderful teaching tool. And, when I say that to people, they go, well, isn't that just teaching by rote? Teaching by rote is if I were to model your entire part for you every single day until you got it right. Teaching by rote teaching by modeling is a very efficient way in rehearsal, to deliver information that would take you more words. And so for me, I was comfortable with my voice. So I didn't have a problem modeling, but not every band director who goes into a choir situation will have either sung in a choir or feels comfortable with their voice. So if you can demonstrate phrasing by picking up your flute, do that. If you can demonstrate the rhythmic integrity that you want for 16th notes, take out a snare drum and play it for them. Because those are the ways that we're connected. We are connected by the musicianship that we share across instrumental ensembles and vocal ensembles. That's not different. The way we do them with our particular instruments maybe, but the perception outside of our playing is that, oh, that was a crescendo. This is what I want the crescendo to sound like. Your day crescendo, like most ensembles, was done too fast. This is how you do that in a way that it's even on both sides. That articulation needs to be staccato. I may not know how to sing staccato or demonstrate. I'm not comfortable singing staccato with my voice, but I can pick up my clarinet and I can show you staccato with my instruments. So those are skills that you already possess as a instrumental educator that transfer readily into the choral classroom.
For sure. So another thing along those lines, and especially with your background in instrumental music, I'm really intrigued to see what you have to say to this. But a little bit of background first is we had a previous guest, Len Lavelle, who's a band director from the Pittsburgh area, and one of the things that he says that is really crucial in his program is the element of singing. That even if it's a lot of simple solfege singing, they do a lot of chorale stuff, a lot of stuff even to work with tuning, and even I know a lot of people believe that, including myself, where even in an instrumental program, singing is so crucial to understanding what we do at the most fundamental form of music making. But one of the largest challenges with that sometimes is even, let's say if we're not dealing with kids who might be part of the band, orchestra, and choir programs, but let's just say if they're some band-only kids, who sometimes, if they don't have much of a vocal background, trying to just even have them gain confidence to be able to sing musically, even if it's not the most proficient singing, it can be a little bit more mumbly, so to say. Yeah. So how would you advise people to, and this is probably more specific than to instrumental directors, but how would you encourage people to get their students to feel comfortable with singing, to sing out, and to use that as a daily tool in their music rehearsals?
It's not unlike teaching a beginning choir class. Most people, all of us sing. Every one of us in the world sings. Unless we have some kind of medical condition that keeps us from doing that, everybody sings. And so when we put them in the context of choir, for some reason, they think there's this block that comes up, because then we put it in academia, and there must be something challenging about it. But really, we all sing. So if I am a band director and I want to get my students more accustomed to singing, you start with something. If you're in a high school choir, you can do this because the vocal range will allow for this. Start with something in unison. Maybe because you want, one of the things that we often want our singers to work on is balance in an ensemble. So you got to know where the melody is. At the beginning of your rehearsal, instead of starting with a scale, you start with everybody singing the melody of the first piece you're going to play, so that everybody becomes aware of that. So you're still teaching about balance and how you want them to listen across the ensemble, but you're also getting them to sing more. The way that students become more comfortable singing is the consistency of your application of it in your instrumental rehearsal. So if you make it a point that every day in rehearsal we're going to sing something, they will get more confident. And with that confidence in themselves, with that repetition, comes more volume and more willing to participate in that. Because it's very personal. Like I said, I can take my French horn apart and keep going about my business. But when I walk out of the classroom in a choir, I take my instrument with me and I'm using it all day long. It's very personal. So if I'm a band director, again, who wants to incorporate that, it's about the consistency of your application. If you can't do it every day, then maybe it's 2 days a week. Maybe it's 3 days a week, and then so it's possible to make that happen. And the reason why I think it's important for instrumentalists to sing is because it internalizes your music making. You embody that in a way that I think is a little more difficult, because like I said, I can put my clarinet down, I can put my tuba down, but you internalize it and the music is coming from within you. So you can hear better. You can actually audiate the pitches that you're about to play, which helps you play better in tune. That's why singers struggle to sing a cappella in tune sometimes, because one, they're not audiating the pitch that comes next, and two, they're not really aware of their function horizontally or vertically in the presentation of the music. They're just singing their part, are not in relationship to what's going on. And I think that's, if I was going to be teaching an instrumentalist, that's how I might implement that once a week, maybe twice a week, 3 times a week, a melody that they're singing, or it could be just singing rhythm. I can sing on one sustained pitch. Ta, 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 ti, ta, ta. This is this rhythm that the French horns are struggling with. Let's everybody sing that with a great tone. That's still counted as singing. It doesn't have to be 4 or 5 or 22 parts to be singing.
Okay, so to kind of delve into that a little bit more, let's say hypothetically if you were to get a new job as a high school band director somewhere, and I were to go observe a rehearsal of yours, say in a concert band setting, whether it be in the warm-up or throughout your rehearsal procedures, even if it's something you've already said, are there any other specific ways that I would see you maybe encourage or try to implement singing within your instrumental ensemble throughout your rehearsal?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is no rule, especially now with some things with a public domain, that you can't take a public domain chorale, maybe a Bach chorale, and you can pop that into finale and pop out some instrumental parts. And you could create your own piece. You could have your student create their own pieces. The first verse will be played by the woodwinds. The second verse will be played by the brass. The third verse, we're going to all sing SATB. And then the fourth verse, we'll all come back full band and play it. I didn't have to buy anything. I have the program already on my computer. I just got to print it out and make it happen. And you can even involve your students in the process of trying to figure out how that's going to be constructed. Maybe you don't want to do the verses in the order that they are, and you give the band some leeway in deciding based on the subject of each verse, which ones do you want to sing? That's how we do in church choirs. You don't always sing all the verses of the hymn. Sometimes you do 1, 2, 5, or 1, 3, 6, or 4, 7, 8, or they get long. But that's another way to get them to buy into this and build a community that embraces singing as a part of the instrumental rehearsal, because now they're involved in the process. Didn't cost you any money, and you sound like someone who's well versed in finale. And there you go. That's what you would see in my rehearsal. Because sorry, go ahead. I could go on about that, but that's kind of a really quick and dirty way to incorporate that.
Yeah, for sure. And with something a lot of directors can always agree upon is the importance of singing, because some might delve more into it than others. But if there was 1 or 2 things that you really wanted your instrumental students, say if you were a band director, to really take away from their experiences in singing in rehearsal, what would those things be that you wanted them to take away from that or to gain in their skill set?
Breath management. How do you take a breath that's efficient enough to support the tone and to also support the musical line that you want for the singers to be able to produce in any given piece? I guess that's kind of 2 wrapped up into one. And I think the other thing that I would want folks to realize is that just because the music and instrumental music doesn't have text doesn't mean it lacks the depth that choral music has. All right, so just because your musical line doesn't have a text that goes with it that could give you some context about how you should feel, doesn't mean that you can't have discussions about what is the role of this clarinet part in Movement for Rosa. Why is it important that comes out of this line? Yada dee da da. I can't think of exactly how that line goes that's coming out for me right now, but there's a reason why that happens. Why is it important when you do yada da da dee da 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 dee da 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 dee da dee da da dee? What does that role play? Why is it there? It's a Percy Grainger, right? I think it's one of the Percy Grainger tunes that he collected.
Children's March, I think. Yeah,
from a folk song, right? So what's the point of the folk song? What is a folk song? Why did he collect them? And so because it's a folk songs usually are a little more vernacular in style, a little more light and free. So this is going to determine the way you articulate that. Now, is everybody articulating it the same way? Let's all sing that little melodic phrase together. And then when you get it in your instrumental part, because I know that the lower voices get it, boom, 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 they get that. So now they know how to articulate it. And it's not because you necessarily went, I want a staccato on this 16th, and I want a tenuto on this 16th, and I want a this on this 16th. You got them to figure out the articulation because they understand the role of that piece in the context of the culture from which it came. It's a folk song. Folk songs, some of them are around dancing, so maybe it's going to be a little bit lighter. So that's how they're getting to some of the same things that we do in choir music because we have the text. So anyhow, I can go on and on about how to make these connections, but I think there's so many things that we do that could be similar across these disciplines.
For sure. So now we can even talk a little bit about back with your work as a director of choral activities. But if you had to talk about one or two of your favorite rehearsal tactics, even if it was an instrumental approach, again, what would those two rehearsal tactics be, and what do you like to do with them?
I have two that I like to do, actually. One of them is drawn from my instrumental background, and it's because one of the things that singers struggle with is intervallic integrity. Are you really singing a major second? Are you really singing a perfect fourth? And so I have them do this exercise that I learned in my undergrad, and it's basically do, re, mi, fa, do, re, mi, fa, sol, and so on. And what students are required to do in that is, one, they have to audiate do, re, and you have to, for 3 clicks, hold on to do. But you also have to be able to think ahead, which is what we always ask our students to do. Think ahead, what's coming up in the next measure. Don't just play one measure at a time. Be looking for what's coming up next. So you have to think, I'm singing do. Next, I'm going to sing do, re, mi. So there are a lot of musical skills that are involved in that process that really can be transferred across all pieces of music that you do. And the goal in education, and this is across all subjects, is the ability to have your students transfer learned activities to new activities. That's how you know they've learned. The other activity that I like to do, and this is a more advanced activity, and I know you could do it in a band rehearsal. I'm not sure exactly how it would look, but I call this the progressive choral rehearsal. And what I do is I have my students, we've learned the piece already, and we know kind of what we're singing a little bit, but it's not perfect. And so I'll send my sopranos, altos, tenors, and basses into different corners, and I'll say, work. I want you to work on the solfege in this piece. We're looking for accurate rhythms and accurate pitches. And I call those the low-hanging fruit on the tree of musical ideas for rehearsal. Accurate pitch, accurate rhythm, right? Because the right note at the wrong time is still the wrong note. And so I have them do that in separate groups. This helps me as a young teacher, or as any kind of a teacher. Sometimes it's hard to consume all the sounds that are coming at your face. You may not be able to hear the bassoon because you've been so consumed with the tubas playing this wrong rhythm. Well, I may not be hearing the tenors because I'm so consumed with the sopranos not singing supported through the passaggio, right? So this allows my ears to focus on a particular section while keeping everybody else working. And then what I'll say is, okay, when you feel like you've learned this as much as you can, as best as you can, join another group. This is without me. This is when they decide as a group. So I'm also getting to see some leaders that may not emerge when everybody's looking at me at the same time. Some people don't feel like stepping up and stepping out when you're having full band rehearsal. But when you have many or full, so I'm going back and forth now in my mind, when you're having a full choral rehearsal, so you get to see some of those leaders that may not be outspoken in a full group, but in a small group, they step up. So now I can go to them personally and go, hey, I saw you leading. That was excellent. So then they feel like you see them, and that helps build community. Anyhow, what happens is they all join, and then what they'll hear is either what they've learned and what this group learns either doesn't fit because someone's singing a wrong note, or someone in another section will say, hey, basses, I think this note is not right, and the basses will go, oh, or the basses may go, sopranos, this rhythm is not right. And so they're learning how to work together, because we always say music builds community. Well, you have to actively do that. It doesn't happen because we all are in the same place singing the same song. It's like being in a stadium singing the national anthem. Just because we're all singing in the stadium at the same time does not make us a community. We're just singing the same song at the same time. It's what we do, and it's what we do in the processes we put in place in learning music that builds community. Anyhow, basically that happens, and by the time they're done, the full choir is singing by themselves, and I'm taking notes about the tenors are not doing great here, the basses are not doing great here, sopranos are great here, and then I come back to full rehearsal, and I'm able to go to specific measures and fix things, as opposed to run it again until I hear something, run it again until I hear something that's wrong, because we can get caught in that cycle and not realize it until it's too late.
Yeah, that's a really unique approach, Derrick, especially with kind of overseeing that development of community and student leadership as well. So with the next question, this is a little more philosophical, but whether it be a general music kindergarten class or a high school choir or whatnot, why do we teach music in schools?
That's a very interesting question. I know why I teach music. I teach music because of the role that it's played in my life, and for the power that I think it can have in other people's lives. Um, I know that there are not. I know everybody doesn't believe that because we don't have a world full of music teachers. Some people teach math. Some people teach science. Some people, some people drive school buses, and they are fine with doing those kinds of jobs. What I hope and what I like to think is at the root of all of the work that we do as music educators is to learn about each other, so that our humanity shines brightly, so that we can be in a room with each other and learn how to talk and know how to talk to each other when things get tough, or when or if we're in places of opposition, and or where we learn how to respect each other, um, where we learn how to spark conversations about things that we may not understand, without feeling like we're going to be judged or persecuted because we didn't know those things. I know that's a really hefty, a really lofty goal, but I do believe that that's the role that music plays. See, that's the intangible thing that can never be tested. I have a whole session about assessment in the music classroom, and I think that there are some things that can't be tested, but the things that we cannot test, that are intangible but integral, are why I think we need to have music. And we can't remember how we felt about music before we started teaching. And sometimes as teachers, I think we do that. We spend so much of our time giving light to other people, to build up other people, that sometimes we forget that we need light shown upon us. And when we forget that is when our teaching and the way we connect with people changes in a way that I don't think allows us to be the best versions of ourselves. So I don't know if that really answers your question. It's really intricate. But I think that's the best way I know how to answer that question. Very esoteric, I know, but those are the words that come to mind that describe how I feel in the classroom and how I feel about my work in the classroom.
So some of those topics that you say that we can assess with music, I think some can be assessed, but for the ones that can't be really held measurable but are still so important to the human experience, what are some of those things?
Yeah, you can't test compassion, right? You can't test compassion. You can only create opportunities where people have to grapple with that. You can only create opportunities. Compassion, I think, is an outgrowth of understanding that, wow, that is definitely different than me. And I understand that and I respect that. How can I help? There's really no way to test that, right? Respect. There's no way we can see disrespect, and we can see respect in terms of someone opens up a door, like that's being disrespectful. Someone curses out a teacher, that's disrespectful. But I think that there's some higher levels of respect that aren't that obvious. Like, um, I recognize that I don't agree with whatever issue that you are talking about right now. So out of respect for our friendship, I want to learn what language we need to use to talk to each other so that we can coexist in the same space, and we're able to move forward and help. Like I think about teacher relationships. I know there have been teachers that I have not gotten along with at all, and sometimes I just shut down and I stop talking to them. That was me, the early teacher. And if I'm in situations now where I have tense relationships with colleagues, I can't not talk to them, right? And so, how do I find that place of respecting what they do with our students, and letting that be the avenue through which I talk to them? It's really easy to shut down and go into your us versus them, but you have to figure out where we begin. And that's where I am in my life.
Yeah, it's unique that. So, now talk about some of the people that have been really big leaders towards you in your professional and personal life. Who are some people that have been highly influential to you, and what have you taken away from them?
Yeah. I didn't realize this until after I had left house, but the best teacher I know is my mom. And I didn't realize that until I got a chance to watch. She was doing foster care when she lived in Arkansas. She's moved now. And I got to see her bring in young people from lives that I can't imagine. I can't imagine the myriad of things that they've gone through. And by the time that they left her, to see how their light shined brighter and their smiles were bigger and they looked healthier and they sounded healthier and they knew about appropriate relationships, that's masterful, man. Those are all very intangible things that somehow in the time that she had them, sometimes it was short, sometimes it was long, but every single person that she took in left a much better version of themselves when they left her. So I'll say that that first teacher, without me even knowing this, was my mom. When I was at Arkansas State University, Dr. Tom O'Neill was very integral in my learning as an undergraduate student and pushing me to see what I could be beyond the circumstances that I was in. I've already spoken about Bonnie Kimbrough, who was the band director at the place where I did my instrumental, because I did instrumental student teaching as well. And I actually, my first job, middle school, junior high school job, was at that school where I student taught band. And she was just a wonderful mentor teacher. Even in my student teaching, she allowed me to do things that I know student teachers didn't get to do. Like I conducted the band at our choir, at our band festival contest where they get the ratings and all that. I know student teachers didn't get to do that, but she trusted me with that. And that was major for me. And she continues to be a light for me. I will say my master's degree professor, Dr. Paul Crabb, kicked my butt in the way that I needed it to be kicked, because I was a junior high teacher that just really thought I had learned it all. You know, here I am, this instrumental guy, got in this junior high school job, experiencing this success. I've made it, 4 years into teaching and I've made it. And he really, really pushed me academically. And he was one of the first people to say to me, you don't need to let your personality and your gregarious nature be what drives your classroom teaching. You are smart and you have something to say, and it doesn't have to be after you make people laugh. And then I'll say that what was one of the most life-changing things for me was going through Michigan State, where I learned how to marry my passion, compassion, and academia to learn some of these things I'm talking about, how to be respectful of other cultures, how to think outside of myself for the betterment of all the people involved in the process. And some days it's hard, some days, it's hard. I just look at my circumstances with a thing. And so I'm learning how to step back and go, okay, let me just experience this. And then once I've gone through this experience, then I can come back and reflect upon that to really make a much better and a much more informed decision about that. And I think the other person that I would say has been not even in terms of a pedagogue, but my wife and her understanding of my goals and dreams as a music educator. And I travel a lot, and she holds it down, man. She holds it down, and she recognizes how much it means to me to be able to do this. And she recognizes the impact that it has on our family. And so I just really, really appreciate her and the other folks I mentioned to you for believing in me, for helping me believe in me in a way that I couldn't see, and for still being sources of light in my own life to help me kind of stay recharged so that I can continue to do what I do for other people.
A lot of unique things there. So now to wrap up, and I'll kind of keep this a little open in general, but if you had to offer any advice for any music educator, regardless of age level or what idiom they may teach in or direct in, what would that advice be?
My advice would be have a mission for your work. Have a plan for your work, so that is at the forefront of everything that you do. Have a motto for yourself, for your program. Because you need to have a guiding principle for the work that you do in the classroom. I kind of say this to my students. If I were to tell you, I'll have them walk from one place to the next. I'll say, stand at point A and walk to point B. And then when they get there, I'll say, well, how many footsteps did you take? And they won't have any idea because that's not what they were focused on. Well, if I would have told them ahead of time that I want you to focus on the footsteps that you're taking, they would have had a purpose to their walking. So when you walk into that classroom, your purpose is not concert to concert to concert. I think your purpose should be something bigger than that. And you need to know that purpose before you start your work. because that's going to guide your work and the choices you make, whether it be repertoire or how you interact with your students throughout that entire year or through your entire tenure at whatever job you happen to be in.
Yeah, lots of great advice there. So, Dr. Fox, I'd like to thank you again for all of your time and insight. It's been a great interview, and I know people are going to really enjoy this. And all the best to you and your students on the remainder of your school year.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been so great to be here. Thank you.
This concludes our episode. Many thanks to Dr. Derrick Fox for all of his time, wisdom, and insight on leading a comprehensive music program. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to check out the show page on Facebook under Director's Circle, as well as subscribing to the show on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or even looking us up on the web to stay updated on all future episodes. Again, this is Doug Conrad saying thank you for listening, and be sure to tune in to the next edition of Director's Circle.